69 News live at sunrise. Your life, your world, your news. 69 News live at sunrise starts now.
Well, as an investigator, he says he's seen it all, and he says workers' comp fraud could be costing you hundreds of dollars each year. Here to explain is Paul Colbert, founder of the Meridian Investigative Group. Paul, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for making the trek here. I know you're kind of traveling. You're from Florida, right?
I am from Florida. Traveling
around the country talking about workers' comp fraud. Tell us first a little bit about your very interesting job. What exactly do you do?
I am the CEO of Meridian Investigative Group, and what we do is we help assist insurance carriers and bolster defense litigation. So primarily we're here to talk about workers' comp, and really what we do is undercover surveillance.
Wow. Okay. So I mentioned in our lead-in that you've seen it all, and we're going to talk about some extreme cases in a minute, but give us kind of the spectrum, everything from what to what.
I mean, you name it. I mean, it's not just workers' comp, liability, auto staged accidents. I mean, you name it, the spectrum. If it's insurable, we investigate it.
Wow. Okay. Sounds like a fun job. Always interesting, I bet, right? Never a dull moment. Never. So let's define first what workers' comp is and what it isn't, Paul.
Okay. Let's start with what it isn't. Okay. That's probably the easier way to describe it. What it isn't is it's not an investment vehicle. And unfortunately, you have people out there that think that they've paid into a system, and now at some point they're expecting a return on their investment. The problem with that is that it's an overworked system already, and when you have people abusing the system, naturally people that have legitimate injuries are finding it harder and harder to get them covered. What it is it's in place for people that do have legitimate injuries. People, and we're not here to take away what's rightfully, you know, if someone's been legitimately injured, by all means, they deserve it. But what we are here to do is police that and make sure that people are on the up and up.
Yeah. And what's your concern about workers' comp in today's world and the kind of things that you see as an investigator?
My biggest concern is that, you know, fraud for us is on the rise. We've seen a significant uptick, and, you know, people have come to me, they're like, well, it's great for business. Unfortunately, I live in the society too, and I see the things that go on, so naturally it's not great. Sure, it's great for business, but for me as a person, I live here as well, and I have to, you know, be a productive member of society. So to see that, it's disheartening.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about, you know, just how bad it is and how it can affect everyone in our next segment. But first, let's kind of make this a little more real and show our viewer to her neck and her shoulders. And we have some seconds. Yeah, it sounds funny almost, Paul, but it isn't. Coming up in just a few minutes, we'll talk about how common workers' comp fraud is, and Paul will tell us how it could affect you. That's coming up in just a matter of minutes. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Well, he has seen people walk with crutches one day and ride in the rodeo the next. While it may sound funny to some, investigator Paul Colbert from Meridian Investigative Group says this kind of fraud could be affecting your pocketbook. Paul joins me once again to explain. Paul, good morning once again.
Thank you.
So you showed us some extreme cases during our last segment, which almost seem fake in a way. It's hard to believe that this is actually going on. How common would you say this is? How real is this problem?
It's a very real problem, and as we were talking earlier, for me, I see it day in and day out. I mean, I walk past our video room, and I'm never amazed at what I see. I mean, from people injecting drugs, people that aren't even claimants, just happen to be casualties of being near our investigators, and they see this stuff. It's just, so the acts that people are willing to commit for money is just, it's beyond me.
And what do you tend to see, Paul? Who tends to commit this kind of fraud, and why, in your opinion?
Fraud, really, it's everyone. I mean, it crosses all gender lines, all ethnic backgrounds. You really, there's no rhyme or reason to it. It just, people are just, and especially, you know, in these times, the economy is really kind of dictating. Fraud is certainly on the rise for us.
Just a lot of folks hungry for money, I guess, right?
Well, and they're willing to do whatever it takes. And for the people that are willing to take that risk, it's certainly a low-risk, high-reward type crime. And it's not like you're seeing, you know, insurance fraud publicized on the news every day.
Right.
You don't open your paper and see someone being prosecuted for workers' comp fraud. You do see arson every day, which is just another form of fraud that we also investigate. Okay,
interesting. So, you know, what do you say to the folks watching who are thinking, why do I care about workers' comp fraud? You know, I've never done it. What does this matter to me?
Sure. When you're planning your bills, whether it be on the weekend or on a Monday, most people aren't allocating money for fraud. I don't usually see a line item for that. Well, you should be, because it's about $900 to $950 per person per household. And that's the way that works is For example, a retail store, they're experiencing high claims volume. They've got a lot of slip and falls of a lot of liability. The insurance carrier is most definitely going to raise the rates on them the next year. So to recoup that, the retail store is just going to raise their rates on cost of goods and services. So all it does is just continues to trickle down to the consumer, which is you and I.
Okay, so we're having to pay more and our costs are going up. Absolutely. Because this kind of fraud is
And everybody says,
continuing.
why is everything so expensive these days? Well, fraud is certainly contributing to that.
Wow, interesting. So what can we do? What are the solutions to stop this once and for all?
Well, the biggest thing is really just kind of, as we're doing today, is creating an awareness, you know, that fraud is there, it's real, it happens every day, and it does cost you personally. On a national scope, it's 80 to 100 billion.
Wow.
So that tab continues to come in year in and year out, and to put that in perspective, you know, we could fund cancer research for the next 13 years, and you know how much, you know, scientific research cost us. But most of the people that are out there committing fraudulent claims aren't concerned about that.
Wow. So who should we, you know, report this to? You're in Florida, obviously. Right. So, you know, can folks get in touch with your company, or who should they call if they see some sort of fraud or maybe are suspicious of workers' comp fraud? Right.
Typically what you want to do is contact your Department of Insurance Fraud. Every state has a state level, and typically they'll be able to, based on the information that you give, they can find out who the carrier is, who the employer is, and they can assign an investigator, or they would contract out with a company such as Meridian.
Okay, and I guess it's best to encourage people, you know, as soon as you have a hunch that this might be going on, just put in a call?
Absolutely. I mean, statistically, 1 in 4 people are aware of workers' comp fraud in the workplace, and they don't report it. So reporting it is probably the biggest step to overcome.
Wow. Okay, Paul. Well, thanks so much for helping to raise awareness here this morning and to share a little bit more about the issue. You can find out more about Paul and his company on his website. There it is, migclaims.com.